little counterpoint here. When I was a young boy, Richard Pryor was my favorite comedian. And he had a bit where he was walking down the street and he was walking by this dark alleyway. I'm not going to pretend I'm like him. And he said he heard a voice call unto him, and he knew it was the voice of God. And he said, I did not venture down that dark alleyway, for it might not have been the voice of God, but 2 or 3 brothers with a baseball bat, and he didn't use the word brother. The point is, even within the black community, there's trepidation, you know, around groups of young black men. When I'm on the street and I see a couple black guys coming, I always check my wallet. You know, I'm aware.
Sure.
I don't know where that comes from. It's real. I mean, I feel that way now. Less now in my place I am now in my life, but back when I was young, if I saw a bunch of black guys hanging out, I would cross the street.
Okay.
And of course, if I saw a bunch of young white guys in leather, I might do the same thing. So
tats and neo-Nazi,
or bikers.
You know,
if I saw a bunch of motorcycle guys,
sure.
I'd probably cross the street as well. So I can't say exclusively a black thing. It's a threat reaction. If I perceive a person of color to be educated or to be reasonable, everything goes out the window. But I do walk up, I'm kind of curiously saying, well, how's he going to show up? Now, I'm prepared to give people the benefit of the doubt. There are people in this country that are not, that have some pretty ingrained things. And, and I don't think this broadcast is going to be for them. No. It's really for people who don't want to be prejudiced, but know they have prejudice. And I got to give myself some credit for knowing that I have racist beliefs. I do. And they persist to this day. When I see violence in the inner city or a young black man committing a terrible crime, I get frustrated. It's like, God damn it. Can't he tuck himself in and make better choices?
But the question I have is, what do you expect them to do in the inner city? I mean, when you've got a minority class that's been forced to live in substandard sort of economic circumstances, and they turn against each other sometime, I mean, what do you expect? Then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then whites say, oh yeah, they're just acting just the way, you know. But it's like they've created this environment where, you know, there's nowhere else for blacks to turn.
No, you make a magnificent point here. And so, but I'll answer your question. What I expect them to do is get educated and move out of the ghetto.
Well, yeah, education is good, and I think that has value. And, you know, as you pointed out, my family, you know, came from a long line of sort of education being important. But I don't think education is always the answer in the traditional sense, and just getting a college degree. I mean, you know, I don't think, you know, Jay-Z or you think Dr. Dre has a PhD?
Is Dr. Dre somebody you want people to emulate?
Well, in music, he's been very successful, you know. Jay-Z, you know, he's been very successful. I don't think he had it. I think he only went through high school. So, you know, education is good, but there are ways, if you're creative and you're smart, that you can actually be successful without just going to, you know, getting that, you know, college degree. I mean, it certainly is helpful if that's the track you want to go down. But there are other ways. The challenge for blacks is a lot of those other avenues aren't as easily accessible to them as it is to the average white person.
Well, then allow me to share this with you, because I feel pretty strongly about it.
Sure.
And again, I'm not going to get too much into this, but being a member of the Jewish community, we know our history. I've been taught, and Jews represent less than 1% of 1% of the world population, but their contribution to literature and science and medicine and is exponentially greater than their numbers. And I believe the reason why, and again, this is my opinion, is that for thousands and thousands of years, the Jewish people have emphasized education. And it was because they wanted to study their books, their holy books, the books of God, the Torah, the Talmud.
Got it.
And because they could do that, they could read and write, they became expert in other areas. And it was this emphasis on education that is the reason why the Jews have flourished really in every society in which they found themselves until they were exterminated or kicked out. And it's just this commitment to education. So I happen to believe, I'm not saying you have to get a college degree, but you got to be well read. You got to, you have to speak appropriately. You have to be able to present yourself in a way that people are not going to be pushed away. And the one tragedy I have, and I'm not discounting what you said because it's true, the black community has been cloistered in these inner city ghettos. And a ghetto is the right word, because there was a Jewish ghetto in Poland, and it's a grouping of the same ethnicity. And opportunities don't live the same way there. And you got to fight for opportunities there. And I know a lot of people The young man that I worked with in the last gig I told you about, he was raised in South Central Los Angeles, single mother, but she worked 2 and 3 jobs to put him through a private Christian school there.
Sure.
He went to college, and now he's making 6 figures a year, has a beautiful wife, a home, and 2 kids, and his wife is a professor. So he elevated himself out of his environment through education. So I'm not saying it's the only way you can do it, as you mentioned, but it's certainly a tried and true way to do it.
Yeah.
And the stats prove it out. People with college degrees make significantly more than those that don't. So we'll come back to that in a minute, because this is going to be an important topic. But I want to close just as far as the side of advocating and honoring the black plight. I want to talk about institutionalized discrimination.
Okay.
Because this is something that, and this is an aspect of white privilege. Remember many years ago, you and I went to Northern California to check out HeartMath, and we'd do this a lot. We'd always switch off who's get the rental car. Well, this time it was your turn to get the rental car, and you went to the counter, and they wouldn't rent to you. They had some bullshit reason why they wouldn't rent the car to you. I went to the guy and said, this guy's got a PhD, and he's a multi-book writing author, and you don't want to rent the car to him? And I remember being really frustrated about it, and you were too. You were a lot less upset than I was about it. But I wasn't going to yell at the clerk, because it wasn't his job. He was told what to do. It was institutionalized. I had to rent the car. And as I did the research for this conversation, over time, ever since the Jim Crow laws were kind of starting to phase out, blacks could not achieve home loans like in the Midwest, and had all the disadvantages of renting and all the obligations of home ownership, and they were just taken advantage of. Some eventually got together, sued, and got some, but the majority were taken advantage of their whole life. They owned that home. Access to jobs, access to education, for generations have been denied to black by design. By design.
Yeah, of course.
And banks still don't want to lend to black families or black entrepreneurs. It's still harder. So this is something the white community has no idea of. And what's easy and second nature to us is an effort for you.
Absolutely.
And I think anyone that denies that is just not wanting to see that as true. I have issues with the black community we're going to talk about in a minute, but this is not one of them. If you're raised black in this country, by and large, you have a harder road. And I say that from a member of a minority myself. I have respect for people who overcome challenges. And every black that we see that is, again, Barack Obama was kind of can't really use him. He was the exception that proves the rule. He came from a very poor family, raised by his mother, died early. He was raised by his grandparents, but every step of the way, he was nurtured because his brilliance shone through. But the blacks who have made it, they overcame great things to do it.
Sure. And unfortunately, and a lot of, intelligent black families tell their kids, you're going to have to be twice as good as the average white kid to even be successful at the things that you love doing. Because if you're not, you just aren't going to get any traction. And it's because of the things you've just been talking about.
Maybe less in the major cities like Chicago, LA, New York. Certainly people are more acclimated to having black coworkers and black, significant others. But I'll give you one more example. Years ago, I had a job that was headquartered in Nashville, and I would take my clients living in LA. I'd take my clients, I'd fly them across country to go see the Titan games, the NFL team, the Titans. And I was in Adelphia Stadium. I think it's called Adelphia Stadium. And I'm in this 10,000 seat section. I'm towards the top, and in comes this white woman with her black boyfriend. And they start walking up the stairs. I looked around, and every single set of those 10,000 eyes was upon them. No one said a thing.
Right.
Everyone was incredibly well behaved, and I was very impressed with that. And they sat down, and I realized that 20 or 30 years ago, he may have been killed. He may have been lynched.
True.
And I said, maybe to another 20 years, no one will even think to look. I don't think if that happened in L.A., anybody would have looked. Anyway, it was just interesting. And it just comes back to this whole... There was a time I was very uncomfortable with mixed race relationships.
Oh, yeah?
It just seemed off to me.
Okay.
Kind of wanted, put like with like, Older, I'd have to own that.
Sure.
And when I saw a mixed race couple, and it was never rude, of course, but at first I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I have also never dated a black woman. And I never thought to. It never occurred to me to do that. And I don't know if that's racial prejudice or just comfort, but, it never even occurred to me. And I had black friends who were wonderful.